Morning has broken like the first morning. Blackbird has spoken like the first bird. Praise for the singing, praise for the morning, praise for them springing fresh from the word. Sweet the rain's new fall, sunlit from heaven, like the first dew fall on the first grass. Praise for the sweetness of the wet garden, sprung in completeness where his feet pass. Mine is the sunlight, mine is the morning, born of the one light, Eden's a play. Praise with elation, praise every morning, God's recreation of the new day.
Just a really quick reminder for everyone to silence their cell phones, because that was my cell phone dinging during the prelude. Good morning. My name is Brian Debink, and my pronouns are he, him, and his. Welcome to South Valley service today. Our worship team this morning is our worship leader and our minister, Reverend Laura Young, myself, Brian Debink, our worship associate, our Time for All Ages speaker and director of religious exploration, Rob Carlson. Our musicians today are John Allen, Rick Nobis, Tara Briggs, and Robert Peterson. And our hymn leader is John Allen. Our board greeter today will be Kathleen Luck, and of course, we are joined by all of you who really make service happen. We would like to extend an especially warm welcome to those who are here for the first time. We are so glad that you are here. If you'd like to get to know us more, we encourage you to fill out the connection card via our online form found in the order of service you just downloaded with the QR code when you arrived. If you missed it, you can go back and get it at the welcome table. Now's a great time to do it while there's nothing particularly important to do, just me rambling on. And you're welcome to also speak with any of the people you see in service today or our welcome team to get better connected. All of our welcoming material can also be found on the website. We also have a religious exploration program that meets weekly on Sundays during worship and hosts activities throughout the month. And our director, Rob Carlson, is happy to answer any questions you have to help you get connected with our programs after worship. There's a lot happening at South Valley, and the Happenings weekly newsletter is a concise, up-to-the-minute way to stay connected. There's a link in the order of service that you downloaded, and also on the website you can get connected with that, where you can subscribe if you wish.
Well, good morning, everyone. As Brian mentioned, my name is Rob Carlson, and I'm the Director of Religious Exploration here at South Valley. And my pronouns are he, him, and his. And this upcoming week and weekend, we have some events and activities happening for our families. And I am just looking for a few extra hands, some extra help from any interested older youth and especially adults. First, if there are some among you who would be available and willing to help with our craft stations for our holiday crafternoon this coming Friday here at the church at 1 o'clock. I'd love to know if you might be interested in helping out with that. And if so, you can come and find me after worship, or you can send me an email. Let me know if you are interested in helping out, and I'll tell you a little more about some of the projects that we'll be doing for that. And then right after that craft event on Friday, we'll head upstairs here for a brief pageant rehearsal with our kids and youth, and I'd love to have some extra ears and eyes and hands for that, if we could. And then finally the next day, Saturday the 12th, we'll have one more pageant rehearsal here at 5 o'clock in the evening. And so I'd love to have some extra hands for that also. So again, if you'd be interested in being available for our kids' activities this weekend, you can let Grace Burns or myself know, and we'll be in touch. So thank you. Friday is going to be that crafternoon. We'll have some card making and some other activities downstairs, and that'll be on Friday at 1 o'clock. Brief pageant rehearsal after that, and then the following day, Saturday, we'll do one more pageant rehearsal. It's a lot happening in a weekend, so three different things happening there. Yeah, does that sound good?
It sounds different.
Sounds different? Oh.
Okay.
Come find me if you're interested. I'll try to make it a little more concise. Thanks, Brian.
Well, I believe that previously we had said Saturday was the crafternoon, but we'll sort it all out and get updated information or confirmation on what Rob just said. Yeah. Also this week, we have on Tuesday, the 7th, we have a Blue Christmas service at 7 p.m. There'll be a Taze. I don't know if I'm... Taise. I actually meant to get the pronunciation for that before, but got it. Taise, it's a singing meditation style of service, and that'll be hosted by Reverend Laura and Reverend John Cooper. No? John Allen. Different John. Okay, I'm here this morning. All right, and finally, for our final announcement today is Christmas Eve service will be on Christmas Eve at 6 o'clock p.m. There will also be a cookie exchange. Please bring your homemade cookies to exchange with your friends and loved ones here in our community. And that, Jordan, do you want to come up and help us with the chalice lighting? All four of you. Okay. The whole Robertses, please come forward.
True to form, we have not rehearsed. So, some of you may remember this from last year's Zoom service, and if so, we apologize, but we just thought it was so good it bears repeating. So this is from the American Jewish World Service, an organization with values much like our own. So just a brief story about Hanukkah. Each year, the story of Hanukkah reminds us that it is in our power to overcome insurmountable odds. When the Maccabees, surrounded and outnumbered, faced with the ancient Syrian Greeks, they did not despair. They fought fiercely against the forces that wanted to oppress them. And when they reclaimed the temple and realized they had only enough oil to kindle the menorah for one night, they lit their flame, trusting that a miracle would extend this light. Our tradition beckons us to choose to act in the face of the challenges before us. We can choose courage in the face of fear and choose hope in the face of anguish. Our world has faced innumerable obstacles this year, but just as our ancestors did, together we can choose light. So as we light each candle, we invite you to reflect on how you are choosing light and justice this year. Read and I'll light them, okay? So step up to the microphone.
What I read? Right here. I choose light by illuminating the path to a better, brighter, more equitable world for all.
I choose joy by savoring each opportunity to celebrate, no matter how small.
I choose dignity by working to uphold the inherent worth of every human being.
I choose generosity by gifting my time, talents, and resources or treasure to help others.
I choose connection by deepening my relationships with friends and loved ones and expanding my circles to build kinship with people whose lives are different from my own.
I choose community by deepening my relationships with friends and loved ones and expanding my circles. I choose community by joining together to realize our shared vision of Tikkun Olam, working to repair our world.
I choose action by raising my voice to fight the injustices all around us.
I choose justice by living my values and rededicating myself toward building a world where all people can realize their full human rights.
You can leave that one. Good too.
You want to relight it? Sure. And then we will sing the traditional Hanukkah candle lighting prayer for you.
Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kishanu b'mitzvotav mitzivanu lehadnekner shel Hanukkah. Amen.
Sorry. All right, now Jordan will light our chalice for us while we say our chalice lighting words. Let us light our, We light this chalice for the warmth of love, for the light of truth, and for the energy of action. Please stand in body, mind, or spirit, and join us to sing our opening hymn, 10:15, in your teal hymnal. 10:15. We'll sing verses 1 and 2.
Good morning, I'm Kathleen Luck, and my pronouns are she and her. I am a member of the Board of Trustees here at South Valley Unitarian Universalist Society. Come, come, whoever you are welcome here. No matter your age, your size, the color of your eyes, your hair, your skin, you are welcome here. No matter your gender, whom you love, how you speak, or whatever your abilities, you are welcome here. You are welcome here whether you come with laughter in your heart or tears in your eyes. You are welcome here. No matter what you have experienced in the past, no matter what awaits you in the future, you are welcome here. Whether you believe in God all of the time, some of the time, or none of the time, you are welcome here. This is a community of open minds, loving hearts, and willing hands. You are welcome here at South Valley Unitarian Universalist Society.
I am the Reverend Laura Young, and my pronouns are she, her, and hers. It is good to be together. It is especially good to be together when the news of the world that we were delivered this week into is that we are still very much in the midst, that the world still very much needs us to show up. It always has, and it will continue to be so. And this week, I just want to name in our own hearts the sadness of the shooting in Michigan, where 4 young people lost their lives. That this is a terrible, unacceptable way for us to conduct ourselves in a society. And we send more than our thoughts and prayers. We send our solidarity and our commitment to help make this world a better and safer place for all youth, all youth. I also want to just acknowledge that as Unitarian Universalists, we are all very carefully watching what is happening in the highest court of our land. And however it is that you land on reproductive choice within your own personal life, we have a commitment as a faith tradition to hold in solidarity the bodily integrity of all human beings, and that their choice is theirs to make. And that complexity doesn't stop there. Of course, we continue to walk in and among the new wave of a variant of COVID-19 that has arrived on our doorsteps this week, not knowing how it will push and pull us in the days and weeks to come. All of these things and all of the things that remain unnamed in this moment are here with us in this room. But guess who is also in this room? You and me and you and you and you And together we will make it through this time, just as we have in the past. So our call to worship this morning is by one of my favorite philosophers, Shel Silverstein. And he calls to us about the forgotten language. Once I spoke the language of the flowers. Once I understood each word the caterpillar said. Once I smiled in secret at the gossip of the starlings and shared a conversation with the housefly in my bed. Once I heard and answered all the questions of the crickets and joined the crying of each falling, dying flake of snow. Once I spoke the language of the flowers. How did it go? How did it go? And I would add, perhaps in our worship today, we might be able to hear the whisper of that language long ago forgotten. May we be committed thus so. Let us worship.
This is a story of ritual by the late Bird Baylor. Everybody needs a rock. I'm sorry for kids who don't have a rock for a friend. I'm sorry for kids who only have tricycles, bicycles, horses, elephants, goldfish, 3-room playhouses, fire engines, wind-up dragons, and things like that, if they don't have a rock for a friend. And that's why I'm giving them my own 10 rules for finding a rock. Not just any rock, I mean a special one that you find yourself and keep as long as you can, maybe forever. If somebody says, well, what's so special about that rock? Don't even tell them. I don't. Nobody is supposed to know what's special about another person's rock. All right, so here are the rules. Rule number 1, if you can, go to a mountain made out of nothing but 100 million shiny, small, beautiful, roundish rocks. But if you can't do that, any place will do. Even an alley, even a sandy road. Rule number 2, when you are looking at rocks, don't let mothers or fathers or sisters or brothers or even best friends talk to you. You should choose a rock while everything is quiet. Don't let dogs bark at you or bees buzz at you. But if they do, don't worry. The worst thing you can do is go rock hunting when you are worried. Rule number 3, bend down. More, even more. You may have to sit on the ground with your head almost touching the earth. You have to look a rock right in the eye. Otherwise, don't blame me if you can't find a good one. Rule number 4, don't get a rock that is too big. You will always be sorry. It won't fit in your hand right, and it won't fit in your pocket. A rock that's as big as an apple is usually too big. A rock that's as big as a horse is much too big. Rule number 5, don't choose a rock that's too small either. It will only be easy to lose, or a mouse might eat it, thinking that it's a seed. Rule number 6, the size must be perfect. It has to feel easy in your hand when you close your fingers over it. It has to feel jumpy in your pocket when you run. Some people touch a rock 1,000 times a day. There aren't many things that feel as good as a rock, if the rock is perfect. Rule number 7, look for the perfect color. That could be a sort of pinkish gray with bits of silvery shine in it. Some rocks that look brown are really other colors, but you only see them when you squint and when the sun is just right. Another way to see colors is to dip your rock in a clear mountain stream if one is passing by. Rule number 8, the shape of the rock is totally up to you. There's a girl in Alaska who I know who only likes flat rocks. Don't ask me why. I kind of like them lumpy. The thing to remember about shapes is this. Any rock looks good with 100 other rocks around it on a hill, but if your rock is going to be special, it should look good by itself, maybe on the ground or even in the bathtub. Rule number 9, always sniff a rock. Rocks have their own smells. Some kids can tell by sniffing whether a rock came from the middle of the earth or from an ocean or from a mountain where wind and sun touched it every day for 1,000,000 years. You'll find out that grown-ups can't tell these things. Too bad for them. They just can't smell as well as kids can. Rule number 10, don't ask anybody to help you choose. I've seen a lizard pick one rock out of a desert full of rocks and go sit there alone. I've seen a snail pass up 20 rocks and spend all day getting to the one it wanted. You may have to make up your own mind, but you will know. All right, well, that's the 10 rules. If you think of any more, write them down for yourself. I'm going out to play a game that just takes me and one rock to play. I happen to have a rock here in my hand. Everyone needs a rock. Thank you for that, Bird Baylor. And now I'd like to invite our young people to join Grace and I downstairs for our RE activities.
This community, our church, and its many ministries are made possible only by the gifts that you give of your time, your talent, and your treasure. Many of you pledge monthly to support our work, and we are grateful for this. Your gifts help to ensure that we are able to live our values in the rest of the world. We use Breeze to collect Sunday offerings online, and the link is in, as you guessed it, the order of service that you downloaded when you walked in. If you prefer a physical donation, there are baskets that will be passed in the sanctuary, and you are welcome to place cash as you wish in there. As part of our ministry at South Valley includes sharing our Sunday worship offerings with a charitable organization that aligns with our principles and values. In loving memory of Connie Gates, who is one of our founding members and a fierce justice advocate, our Social Action Council has chosen the Unitarian Universalist Service Committee Guests at Your Table program as our Split the Plate recipient for November. The UUSC works to uphold the rights of people displaced due to climate, conflict, and economic hardships, and responds to humanitarian crises focusing on those who are most marginalized. UUSC's work is grounded in the belief that all people have inherent power and dignity. Materials for Guests at Your Table will be available, actually they're available now in the back of the sanctuary, probably up front. Also, grab one of these. This is what you'd get, place it on your table, and any change, anything that you want to put in there during your meals at home. That's what the Guest at Your Table is. This is the Guest at Your Table, and then you return that. Usually you count that money up and write a check or something like that, and then that's the most efficient way to get the money back to us and also all the people out there who need it. So please join me in reading our offertory words. We are this church. We are its hands, its heart, its voice. Together we share in the wealth of this community and sustain it with our gifts.
For all all that we have received and all we have found the courage to give, may we be truly grateful. May these gifts be a blessing on South Valley and on the Unitarian Universalist Service Committee. All gathered here today are invited to participate in a silent ritual of joys and sorrows. If you have a joy or sorrow that you'd like to have held in community, you're invited to come forward to the table at this time and place a stone in the water. Feel free to pause as you select your perfect rock and place it gently in the water bowl. This ritual is practiced in silence, both of the gathered community and those who are approaching the altar, and John will share additional music with us during this time. At the close of the ritual, when all who have added their stone have done so, we will add one final stone to represent those joys and sorrows which remain unspoken but still held in kindness. I invite you to process up this side and to return to your seat on that side. Please join me in a time of silent meditation, reflection, or prayer. Spirit of life, let's us breathe together. and together we build a beloved community. Amen.
For our reading today, more wisdom from the Silverstein, from Where the Sidewalk Ends. This is magic. Sandra's seen a leprechaun. Eddie touched a troll. Lori danced with witches once. Charlie found some goblin's gold. Donald heard a mermaid sing. Susie spied an elf. But all the magic I have known, I've had to make myself.
So about a dozen years ago, in the aftermath of a business failure, I tried to be a life coach. I've mentioned that before. That didn't work out. I'm still looking for my purpose here. Anyway, after about a dozen years ago, I was walking through that experience, and I endured a period of sadness and confusion. And it persisted for the better part of a year. And it was not the first such period of despair I had experienced, nor was it the last. I have come to understand as I move through my adulthood that understanding our internal patterns and learning to cope with the nervous systems that we have been given is a major work of adulthood. What made this particular experience of sadness and confusion significant in my mind is how its end began to unfold. So one evening at home, I found myself feeling quite bitter. My mind was upsetting itself with questions of self-worth and purpose, and I began to argue angrily with God. By the time my children were in bed for the evening, I was really quite riled up internally, and I expressed to my then husband how miserable I was feeling. And as he listened, my tirade of anger turned into angry tears, and I cried out loud with some colorful words and a rather rude hand gesture that truly God could jump into the lake for all I cared, because I was really quite done. My tears fell quickly and thoroughly from that moment until I exhausted myself physically. And when the tears ceased, I lay in my bed and closed my eyes and let my mind just drift. I was awake, but nevertheless I began to perceive my internal landscape as a field of grayness. I felt as if I were at the bottom of a wide well and I was surrounded by emptiness. And I lingered in this space for some time, my thoughts few and far between, and slowly, very slowly, I began to perceive that there was a choice that I needed to make. I could go down further into the grayness, or I could choose to surface. And truly, neither direction held any negative judgment from the source of light that was ever present in that space. So I just sat in my mind in this open space, breathing. And then slowly, I decided that I would surface. And wouldn't you know it, at that moment, Jesus arrived and sat down next to me. It was super irritating, because at that point, I wanted nothing to do with Jesus, and I still sometimes don't really want to still. But anyway, Jesus sat down next to me and started talking to me, and the content of that is not for you, it is for me. But nevertheless, in that moment, I realized that I could make a choice to either surface or go further into grayness. And I made the choice then in that moment to move into a greater place of lightness. Anyway, Jesus didn't really say that much that night anyway. I really just felt like God put him there just to make me wake up and get a little clearer on my purpose in life. And after a time, I just moved to the side and began to crawl up and out of that gray space. And then I awoke and wondered, what the heck just happened? Unfortunately, it wasn't one of those experiences where we go to a mountaintop and have some mystical experience and the light comes on and we have some purpose that we're going to charge forward in our life. It was sort of this amorphous, open-ended, kind of confusing mystical experience. I had no idea what I was supposed to do with my life following that experience. It wasn't one of those times. But I knew that I needed to unstick myself from the rut of negativity that I had become habituated to. So after considering my options for a few weeks, I decided that the best use of my time was getting certified as an indoor cycling instructor. I thought that perhaps the best way to get moving was to literally get moving. And if you've ever been to an indoor cycling class or seen it advertised on TV, your legs actually do spin rather quickly. I knew that this was a fairly low-hanging fruit because I had availed myself of classes in the past. The certification path was short, and my best friend was already an instructor and willing to mentor me. So that's what I did. And it worked. As I spun my legs, I began to find new traction in other parts of my life. I found that by actively encouraging others to be their best, it had a corollary impact in my own life that I was increasing my own sense of efficacy and empowering. Spinning moved me out of the rut and into a new rhythm for my life. And so I kept up this routine until one day I noticed that I had moved from being personally salvific to a gift that I could enjoy offering to others. As I moved away from the self-absorption that my suffering had become towards a more life-affirming set of practices, I began to enjoy my life once again. And I began to be of service to others, which increased my joy exponentially. The practice of joy is just that. It's a practice. If we stop doing joy, we stop feeling joy. We no longer get the results. According to Brené Brown, joy always springs from a practice of gratitude, that there is no joy without a sense of gratitude. And she writes that gratitude is not actually an attitude, it's a practice, and a lifelong one. We must keep practicing so that when the going gets tough, we have access to a deeper well of resilience to see us through. Recently, a family psychiatrist I was working with said that when we are truly stuck, we do our coping skills not in order to feel better in the moment. We do our coping skills so that we can cope. And that we should not expect an emotional payoff from doing those things that help us to cope in the midst of a difficult time. Because in the moment, we're simply trying to figure out how to get through what is, not attain some sort of internal bliss. The idea is that spiritual practices are not about feeling better, but rather they serve the purpose of helping us to cope with circumstances and concerns that would otherwise overwhelm us and send us into despair. This was a radical shift in my understanding of what we're up to when we engage in those practices which bring us a sense of grounding and peace. Spiritual practices are part of all the wisdom traditions of the world, and in Jewish spirituality, they take quite seriously the practice of the communal life as an embodied way to be spiritually connected to each other. In Jewish spirituality, the human being is understood first and foremost as a creature that has natural responses to places, to people, to relationships, to the earth, to transcendence, and that the human is a creature gifted with life, breath, emotionality, and intellect by which to interpret these experiences. I think it's very easy in our modern context to forget our creatureliness. I just love the way that sounds, our creatureliness. The constant flux and flow of information and demands of work and family can often numb us to this basic sense of our creatureliness, that we are actually a very tiny being in a wide and vast universe that is so expansive that there is no way that we can fully grasp it. Teaching spin was something that put me back in touch with my creatureliness. But Jewish spirituality does not limit itself to the individual exploration of self as a means of development. It also calls upon human beings to participate in the religious life and in the community. The human being must participate in communal life in order to fulfill the obligations in return for the life that it is given. The human being in this tradition is made more whole, and wholeheartedly so, not in isolation, but in relationship to others and to the wider community that extends both into the past and into the future. Michael Fishbane, a scholar and professor of Jewish studies at the University of Chicago Divinity School, offered in a recent talk that, in fact, the call to participate in human community and religious community is actually more than an invitation. It's actually a commandment. Dr. Fishbane observes that in the closing verses of the book of Deuteronomy in the Torah, there are a series of warnings and curses and commandments. Love the Torah for its curses and its warnings and its commandments. These curses and warnings, commandments warn the people that if you fail to serve the communal life with joyfulness, you will be cursed and exiled. If you fail to serve the community with joy, you will be cursed and exiled. Community is not just a nice, fluffy, warm experience. It's an expectation with some serious consequences for lack of adherence. The community will find itself in exile if they fail to serve the community, serve the common good with joy. The God of the Torah takes no half-hearted approaches to human thriving. Rather, he will curse you and send you to exile if you try and cheat the system. And while that language may seem a little jarring to our modern ears and sensibilities, I think there is something worthwhile here to notice. As we get beyond that language, we can consider the spiritual principle at work here. If we are creatures made more whole by being in a beloved community, then beloved community is essential to our personhood. Therefore, any actions that we take or fail to take that disrupt or otherwise harm the community have the predictable result of separating us from our humanity and the humanity of others. And to become separated from our own and another person or another community's humanity is something we must guard against. We know this deep in our bones. We know from history and our observations that where there is a lack of connection, isolation and despair may grow and spill over into vitriol, violence, terror. Therefore, we know that this principle is worthy of our attention and adherence to as a human community. And that is why such teachings have endured over the millennia, because they have a truthfulness that continues to guide us to what is right and good for the human. They also endure these teachings because we have to keep doing them all the time for them to work. We must practice joy, not just post about it on Facebook and Twitter. These last 22 months have been difficult, and the results of separations long in the making have been abundantly evident. Racial and economic and social and emotional separation has been systematically revealed, and we can no longer pretend to not know how bad it is. We also know now, at the close of 2021, that the path to wholeness involves radical inclusivity, wholehearted joyfulness, and is something that is entirely possible. That's right. It's entirely possible to build the beloved community by being radically inclusive and wholeheartedly joyful. The evidence is all around us. For has not this community sustained itself despite the odds through a very long COVID night? We cobbled together what resources we had and what seemed to be sure to be exhausted long before we were done, and somehow we were not. Somehow the light endured, and so did we. Somehow the light endured, and so did we. Pinning ourselves to community works. When times are tough, it ensures our individual and collective survival. When times are better, community celebrates the joy of connection and the larger life of which we are all a part. And in the in-between times, we keep practicing so that the community is sustained. We are beginning to recover a bit, I think. And as we emerge from this time, vaccinated and boosted and masked for sure, we are perhaps also a little rattled at the edges from the long endurance of the pandemic. But perhaps we can also find that we are a bit more committed, a bit more mindful, a bit more resilient than before. We know that return always feels like this. Return from exile is always a little uncertain. It's always a little unknown. And that while there are moments of illumination and expansion on the path to return or recovery, it's mostly made up of ordinary days and ordinary moments. And that's where the magic truly lies. That's where we, when what Shel Silverstein does say in his poem, that's where we make our own magic. Going forward, let us not dare to attempt to face the next wave of illness or the next drought or the next mass shooting on our own. Let us instead open ourselves to the beloved community and to the wisdom that is inherently part of that process, so that perhaps what can emerge is a blessing that calls us to remember that truly we need one another. No joke about it. I believe that if we do this, we will overcome the challenges that are ahead. It's not going to be easy. The challenges ahead of healing racial pain and economic disparities and environmental degradation due to climate change are intense, immense, and complicated. And life is not about to get easier on the planet anytime soon. There is no return to the way things were, whatever we thought that meant. There is only going forward And the choice is ours. The choice is ours. And that is finding the place where religious community is revealed for its best. A container for practicing the skills of being more fully human and therefore living into the promise of our birth as a species. We surely are made to love and be loved. And I pray that daily we remember that the only way to get to that which we most deeply crave, a deep and abiding sense of belonging, is to walk one another home. May it be so, and amen. Let us sing.
Let's sing the first two verses. You're welcome to stand if you like. And we also have a little bit of a harmony section here at the end. If you're familiar or if you're comfortable reading music, feel free to take the second line. Two verses. All right, people remained standing for the most part. And you are welcome to do that. And if you have already sat down, you are welcome to, as you are willing to in body, mind, or spirit, join us in our actions as we extinguish our chalice. We extinguish this chalice, but not the warmth of community, the light of truth, nor the energy of action. We hold each other in our hearts until we meet again.
Hear now the benediction. So one final thing from Brene Brown. She says we must stop rehearsing tragedy all the time because waiting for the other shoe to drop never prepares us for when it actually does. It just robs us of our daily joy. The cultivation on joy on a daily basis builds resistance, creativity, wonder, imagination, and researchers say makes us look younger and more attractive. So really, you have nothing to lose this week. That is your homework assignment, to practice joy and to share it with another. Go forth now and be a blessing upon the world. Please be seated for the postlude, and then social hour will take place sort of amorphously inside and outside with your masks on.